Hello and welcome to another episode of the Bitcoin News Show right here on the World Crypto Network. We have a very special episode for you guys here. We have a huge, amazing group of panelists. I'm really excited, really proud to bring you guys these people here and their opinions, their information. It is another Sunday right here, again, in the World Crypto Network. You guys, we got blue skies, we got palm trees. It's beautiful. If it's not beautiful where you guys are, just imagine the trees and the birds. It's a beautiful day. So thanks again, guys, so much for joining us on our beautiful ritual of talking Bitcoin on Sunday. I'm just going to go through a few quick news bits here, and then we can go into the introductions of our amazing panel. So real quick, guys, looks like Miss Ellen DeGeneres broadcast Bitcoin to her multiple millions of users. She actually went on there and spoke to her audience about Bitcoin, of course, in the funny way that she does. So that's really interesting. Over 3 million of her Twitter followers got exposed to that. You guys, and again, you guys can check out all the links down below in the show notes. All the links will be there for you. And even Peter from Decentralized TV even commented on this. Looks like Microsoft Research came out and said that on-chain scaling reduces and degrades decentralization and fails to meet capacity needs. Further, Microsoft stated that layer 2 solutions are necessary for blockchains to scale. So that's after a year of research. So that's some interesting stuff, guys. It also looks like just recently, over 800 Bitcoin Unlimited nodes has gone down, which we have suspected for a long time that they were all ran by basically one actor, one entity, and it looks like that was the case because now there's only 100 left. That project, of course, that Roger said was production ready, right? So that one's we can now put that one in the past. Probably Bitcoin Cash next, but maybe that's for another time. One more little interesting tidbit for you guys: the Bitcoin fees have actually been lower than the BCH fees over the past couple of days. You guys can check that out. Again, I have the links. Just kind of hilarious, guys. We got blocks over 1 megabyte. We have Bitcoin fees lower than BCH. We have Lightning. Yes, it is a beautiful time to be alive, ladies and gentlemen. Looks like also Coinbase suffered some interesting outages today or this week. They were the reports of double spends, people getting their bank accounts drained, and it turns out that Visa has came forth and said that it was all their fault and not Coinbase's fault. So it's still kind of iffy and interesting because, again, Coinbase was the only exchange affected by this. So gotta think that's still got something to do with Coinbase. And then finally, guys, I did launch a calendar page on my website where you can find out where I will be speaking. I'm going to be speaking at a few different events across the country this year. I really like to meet you guys, to say hi, to see you in person. So please check that link out and come and see me if you guys want to say hi. I don't know why, but hey, we can have a fun time talk Bitcoin. So without further ado, guys, let's introduce this amazing panel of Bitcoin enthusiasts and experts. Let's go first with here we go. Let's go in order here. So first, Mr. Tour DeMeester, editor-in-chief of Adamant Research. Tour, how you doing? Oh, you're muted. Still.
I'm doing great.
Awesome. Tour needs no introduction, ladies and gentlemen. He is one of the great Bitcoin analysts and researchers out there. Highly recommend following his Twitter account. Again, guys, I have the Twitter accounts to everybody here right in the show notes. So check that out. We got joining us again, Mr. Francis Pulio from the co-founder of Cadillaxy. Francis, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me again, Vortex. This is going to be an awesome show.
Yes. We're looking forward to some interesting inside information, maybe we could call it, that you have there about the mining discussion today. Going to be really interesting. We got Mr. Michael Borglin, the co-founder at Lightning Ramp. Michael, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Very happy to be here. Thank you.
Yes, sir. We're really excited about discussing your Lightning app that allows you to basically buy with Coinbase over Lightning. So that's some awesome stuff. We'll be looking forward to talking about that. We got Mr. Adam Fiskor, Bitcoin developer. Adam, how are you? Adam. Oh, might have to hit the unmute button. Okay, no problem. He's got it. So Mr. Adam is here. He's got an amazing, interesting article out, you guys. It's about all the latest privacy tech and the latest privacy tools that are being worked on for Bitcoin. So we're looking forward to speaking about that. Then we got Mr. Peter Saddington of Decentralized TV. Peter, how you doing?
Hey, thanks for letting me join you guys. This is a first for me, so I'm glad to be with you guys. You guys are awesome. Been watching you guys for a long time. So keep up the top tier education. It's the more detailed technical stuff that I love from you guys. So appreciate you guys letting me be here.
Yes, sir. Really, really glad to have you, Peter. You know, we might not get quite as technical as you. You know, you do have some awesome technical videos out there, Peter. But we love that. We'd love to have you here. We're really proud to have you, and we really love your channel as well. So, guys, again, check that out in the show notes. Very, very awesome. And without further ado, let us introduce our special guest of the day, Mr. Trace Mayer from the Bitcoin Knowledge Podcast. Trace, how you doing?
Oh, doing wonderful. Thanks so much for having me again. And yeah, I'm very excited for this. It's especially the privacy tech. I think we got some good stuff to talk about there. And then of course Lightning too, and they're somewhat intertwined with each other.
There's so much, Trace. We can't cover it all. There's so much happening in Bitcoin. You know, we do this for a full-time job pretty much, and we still can't keep up. But we do our best to try and keep you guys informed. So let's go ahead and check out the first topic then. So this is going to be where it is. So this is really cool, you guys. Listen, there's a whole lot of development going around right now around Lightning. You know, it's not just the TCP/IP for Bitcoin, right? It's not just routing. It's not just instant payments. This is going to provide an entire layer above Bitcoin that we can do unimaginable things with, that only developers a couple of years from now will be able to kind of, you know, bring together ideas that we can't even understand. For example, it's kind of like trying to imagine Facebook, you know, or Amazon in like 1994. You know, we think that, hey, we're probably going to buy stuff, we're probably going to interact somehow, but you know, we don't know how. And this is the amazing stuff that's coming. So I think this is one of those examples here of this emergent properties of Bitcoin that stuff just happens, man. Developers just come up with ideas, or things just emerge, and this is a great example of that. So first, before we talk to you, Michael, about it, I would like to get Trace's opinion on this, and then we'll ask you, Mike, a couple of questions about this. So Trace, what do you think about this Lightning app now that allows you to, you know, use Coinbase with Lightning, and what do you think about people developing on Lightning? Is there any do you agree that there's all these new exciting apps that are coming out that we can't even keep up with Lightning? And what do you think about this app?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that Lightning is a huge step for the Bitcoin network. It's going to let us build out the second and third network effects of merchants and consumers. However, am very cautious about it. You know, I agree with Elizabeth Stark over at Lightning Labs that we need to be treating this as like an R&D area. Don't put any money there you can't afford to use. So, you know, actually seeing production-ready apps, little leery with that. You know, people need to be aware that we're going to need to be able to upgrade the network. People might lose coins, stuff like that, with bugs or whatever. But you know, if you're at the forefront of the financial innovation that's happening in the world, you should be able to play with it. You know, and I don't necessarily think that we should all be treated as like little kids that need to be babysat. Like, it's our money. If we want to play with Lightning Network, we should be able to do it. And so I'm very excited in that regard. And like the Lightning Ramp app specifically, you know, it's kind of cool getting it working over Coinbase. I saw one of the tweets about having it integrated with Kraken or something, and I think, you know, probably not going to happen because one, we move very conservatively at Kraken. That's one of the reasons I invested in the group there. But two, it's not really. You know, Kraken's an exchange. It's not necessarily a broker or even facilitating the payments or stuff like that. I mean, we're much more kind of a back-end exchange. And so, like, you know, I don't think we're going to see the tech adopted super quickly at places like Kraken or perhaps even Coinbase. I mean, look how long it's taken Coinbase to get segregated witness supported. And they tweeted over a year ago that they were ready for it. So, you know, in terms of upgrading the network, we need to keep in mind that this takes time to do. And it takes time to do it safely and conservatively and very thoughtfully and not have bugs and not have a really bad user experience. You know, yeah, we need to be excited and get this stuff done. But I mean, this code doesn't just get itself written in a week or so, you know?
Absolutely. And, you know, I couldn't have said it better myself. I think that this really is the Wild West. and, you know, we as the developers and as users, we decide how we want to shape this. And so that's really awesome, Trace. Let's go with Michael. Then I want to ask you, Michael, about this app. Please tell us, how did this kind of come to be? How did you first think of this? And, you know, what inspired you to create this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it was about 6 months ago that I decided I wanted to leave my job at Tesla at the time and branch out into the cryptocurrency community. And I started going to meetups and a convention down in Los Angeles and looking at all the ICOs on the market and trying to figure out where I could add value to the community. And it quickly became apparent that Lightning was the most valuable tech that was coming up. And I thought to myself, how can I add the most value to the Lightning network? So originally the idea was like, maybe I could make some sort of app or just contribute into the Lightning protocol itself. But then I thought to myself, you know, how can we onboard millions of people into the Lightning network with a seamless and excellent user interface and not have to have them worry about creating channels, doing all the busy work? What's important to them is really the user experience. So out of that, a few months ago, I started this company with a few of my colleagues, and we came up with this prototype, and the result of it was what you saw in the video. So what you saw in the video was, me testing on a couple of nodes in production, sending and receiving from Coinbase, and it's not live to millions of people today. Trace mentioned a number of things that are very important. Even though we have the ability to onboard 14 million Coinbase customers, we're absolutely not going to do that until the technology is ready. But however, that does mean we can onboard people with small and limited features, and if those people are experienced enough and ready enough to take that risk.
Awesome. So just really briefly, maybe you can just tell us, how does it work? How do you utilize the Lightning Network with Coinbase?
Sure, exactly. So we're going to have reserves. The Lightning Ramp has a Coinbase account, and we have reserves that are on Coinbase and reserves that are on a Lightning node. And let's just say, hypothetically, we have 1,000 USD equivalent on Coinbase and 1,000 USD equivalent on the Lightning Ramp. This means that if someone on Coinbase wants to send funds into the Lightning network, they can send up to $1,000 instantly before our reserves run out on the Coinbase side. And conversely, if someone wanted to send $1,000 from the Lightning network into Coinbase, they could do that as well. And to finalize that, once the imbalance of the reserves occurs, that's when we need to do actually an on-chain transaction to rebalance those funds.
Awesome. Very interesting. Very awesome, Michael. Thank you so much. Let's ask Tour what he thinks about this so far. Tour, what do you think about Lightning and its progress so far? And what do you think about this app and people being just kind of taking it to their own hands and not waiting for Coinbase?
Yeah. Can you hear me, by the way? Yeah, got it. Yeah, I'm really excited about Lightning. I mean, discussions about second layer scaling go back to, my first memories of them are 2013, but I think they go back further. And so to see it happening is just really fantastic. And there's, interestingly, a bit of disbelief, I think, among people that are enthusiastic about cryptocurrency. They just kind of they don't really believe that it's real. They keep using the same thing, that the same rhetoric that, it's going to be 18 months or it's going to be 36 months, or basically implying that it's going to be postponed forever. But I think all these tests really show that it's real, it works. You can try it on the live net. Of course, there's some security concerns that need to be worked out, but fundamentally, I haven't seen any credible objections to the tech. And so, this is the whole value proposition of Bitcoin, is that you create a first layer that's hyper secure and very conservative, and then you build the second layers on top, and there's going to be layers on top of Lightning as well, which eventually is going to be the protocol stack. So to me, this validates a huge, philosophical idea behind Bitcoin, and I think the effects are going to be noticed further on. More and more people are going to catch on that this is really how things are going to scale, and that Lightning is not going to make everything centralized, and it's not going to make it actually has a lot of cool aspects to it that allow for better privacy. So very, very excited, and I shared Trace's thoughts as well about that you have to have some caution, but at the same time, it's real, so let's be excited about it.
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself, Tour. It's real. So let's get excited about it because it is here. It is working. It is growing like crazy. There are thousands of nodes now. It's growing at kind of unprecedented levels. So and also, you know, Ivan on Tech has a couple of great videos on Lightning. I highly recommend you guys check that out. And even Peter, let's go with Peter. You know, he's got a couple of videos, I believe, on Lightning as well. So let me ask you, Peter, do we now have to kind of not worry about those rumors about Coinbase never adopting Lightning because of KYC? Is that like not even a worry anymore? What do you think, Peter?
No. Coinbase is going to continue to do shenanigans for the entire lifespan of how long Coinbase continues to stay relevant and usable. And so actually what we're seeing at the meta level right now is we're seeing a lot of decentralized exchanges start to pop up, or at least the theory that they have some sort of functionality moving forward. So I see that Coinbase is on a limited string. I think there's enough frustrations and shenanigans that have happened in the past with Coinbase that it's going to become either irrelevant or unusable in the future. So I think Lightning might be a nice stopgap. I have a couple. Actually, I wrote down a couple technical questions for Michael about how he's using his resources. But I'm really excited. Let's go back to how you started this context and this conversation. I'm super excited about Lightning. I think it's absolutely the sandbox that we need for Bitcoin. I have three main propositions that I'm super excited about that I'm sure your listeners would like to be encouraged about. Number one, the Lightning Network allows us to earn interest in loaning out BTC. So if you're running a Lightning node, you can make some money, guys. So if you have the technical prowess to do this, I highly recommend that you mess with it, number one, to learn more about how the Bitcoin protocol works, but you can actually earn money. Number two, it allows for microtransactions, micropayments, and it's nearly free. It's nearly free, guys. We don't need other altcoins and use cases. We got Lightning for Bitcoin, which is super huge. And last but not least, which is one of my favorites, I wrote this down just a minute ago, keeps the blocks small. So for those out there might forget that the Lightning Network allows us to keep the blocks relatively small, which is very much in my opinion, in my analysis of Satoshi Nakamoto's paper, is that was kind of the original intent. Now, we can obviously disagree and maybe agree to disagree on that particular philosophical boundary. But I have a question for Michael, if you guys don't mind me throwing this in. Michael, tell us more about how you're building out your resource allocations for Lightning Ramp. You said you're going to be using $1,000. I don't know if there's a lot of people that understand the technicalities behind how that works. I'd love for you just to explain that in layman's terms. Is why did you choose $1,000, and why is that your starting point for your experimentation with Lightning Ramp?
So $1,000 was really just a hypothetical I did during this conversation. What we're going to do is slowly start onboarding people. And as we need to add more reserves, we'll do that as necessary. Initially, right now, there's only a half a dozen people using this app. And these are, friends and colleagues that are really just alpha testing this for us. We won't need, hundreds or thousands of dollars until more people start onboarding. One of the questions I often get when I talk to people about this is, well, what happens if there's no reserves, or what happens if the Lightning Network can't process a payment at the time? And the simple answer is we just refund that payment. For example, if a bank, again, back to the hypothetical, we have $1,000 on each side of the Lightning ramp, and someone does $1,000, so now Coinbase is empty. Our Coinbase reserves is empty, but and then someone tries to send $10, we'll receive that $10 payment and say, oh, we can't process this right now. We'll either, right now what we'll do is we'll just refund it back to the customer. But in the future, what we'll probably do is actually just hold on to that and retry for an hour. And if we can't complete it within an hour, then we'll refund.
Yeah, conservative approach. Sounds pretty good. Peter, let's go with, before you ask another question, let's go with Tour. I believe he has a question as well for Michael. So go ahead, Tour. Oh, you're muted, Tour. Sorry.
So sorry about that. So in that first bit, you said that it quickly became clear that Lightning was the most valuable app in the space. And so I'm just curious, what convinced you that that was the case? Like, aren't there like 8,000 tokens out there? Like, don't some ICOs have some blitzier tech that you could become excited about? Why Lightning in particular for you?
So the reason Lightning is so valuable is because it's connected to Bitcoin. And Bitcoin is the most secure blockchain in the world. No matter what way you look at it, a proof of stake or IOTA's Tango, neither of those are as strong as a base layer as Bitcoin. So when you take the best blockchain and the most secure blockchain in the world and then add on scalability, that makes it more valuable than these other technologies. Additionally, because of the security of Bitcoin, you can add new features to Bitcoin. So for example, Ethereum has smart contract, right? Bitcoin Core doesn't have that, but we have side chains that we can take these features from these other blockchains and just attach them to Bitcoin. So we're kind of accumulating new features over time, and we get the security of Bitcoin. So when you combine that together, like, I don't believe that there's any technology out there that can't be integrated into Bitcoin.
That makes perfect sense to me. Thanks.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the security is the big draw. Like, that's what we start with. That was the goal, right? To censorship resistance, decentralization, security. That's what we start with. We start with fixing the double spend problem, right? From there, we can then extrapolate and create all sorts of crazy things like masked and optimize with Schnorr signatures, and then, you know, add new programming language with simplicity and things like that. So there's just so many things that are in the works, and, you know, some things that I call kind of Bitcoin 2.0 stuff like simplicity. You know, it's just going to be amazing to see what we can do with that. So let's go with Francis. We haven't heard from Francis yet. Francis, do you have any questions for Michael, and what do you think about Lightning and his app so far?
No, I don't really have any questions, but I mean, I think people on the channel know my opinions of Lightning. I'm also super bullish on Lightning, and I think that it was answered very well. Why is Lightning so valuable is because obviously it's reutilizing the existing network effect of Bitcoin, and, you know, the value proposition of Lightning is to make Bitcoins more useful in themselves, the actual Bitcoin monetary units. And, you know, there's a self-feeding cycle between the network effect of Bitcoin being valuable, which is why you build second layer technologies on top of Bitcoin and not others, and which makes Bitcoin itself more valuable. So I really also like the comment of making interest on your Bitcoin, which is a really good comment, because in fact, you know, as a consultant, it has happened to me on 2 occasions where financial institutions were like, what are the business models that we can do to get into Bitcoin? And obviously one of the easiest business models is to act as a liquidity provider for Lightning Network channels. If you have a lot of Bitcoins, for example, if you're receiving Bitcoin deposits, if you're a bank and you're holding Bitcoins in custody, you don't necessarily want to engage in fractional reserve banking, because that's something that people would easily detect and would be very difficult to do. But if people are giving you their Bitcoin deposits for safekeeping, you can leverage that as a financial institution and put some Bitcoins in a Lightning node, and also get involved in stuff like providing liquidity for atomic swaps and stuff like that. So what I'm also seeing is, you know, some of the problems of Lightning Network, which is low liquidity, right? And the fact that you have to open channels in order to get in and out. There's a business opportunity for startups to fill this need, right? So Coinbase, for example, doesn't have this bridge right now, so that's an entrepreneurial need that you're giving, and also the liquidity aspect. What if I want to leave a channel? Well, I think it's super smart. If I want to leave the Lightning Network and I don't have enough liquidity, I'll just pay someone to send me off on-chain coins for a Lightning transaction. So I think that was super smart. I really like the idea of the app of utilizing existing network effects. I think that's really smart. So you have Coinbase's, you know, 12 million users, and instead of bootstrapping something else, you're just tapping into that. I thought that was a really good idea. And also, just a thought is, you know, this is a really competitive advantage for first movers, and it also highlights something which I hold dear, is that, you know, the Bitcoin companies really need to always stay on the bleeding edge tech. They always need to be on their guard. There's also always some kind of way, some kind of new tech which is gonna maybe disrupt their business models. So what we're saying is that I really hope that the Bitcoin incumbents, like, you know, Coinbase and Kraken, they don't. It's good to have a conservative mentality, but it's also a fact that if you have these small companies that get ready for Lightning and there's some kind of black swan happening, the fees kind of skyrocket like we saw last Christmas or anything like that. You, as a company, you really want to keep an eye on this bleeding edge tech, to play around with it, to integrate it. So I hope that Coinbase is actually looking to integrate Lightning Network. But in the meanwhile, having this new app, I think is a really great idea. And congratulations on the idea. I think it's really cool, and I really hope it takes off. Good luck.
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely congrats on that idea, Michael. I think that's pretty awesome. And again, this is the forward thinking that people in the Bitcoin network, that people in the Bitcoin community have, because, we want to see Bitcoin succeed. We want to see it succeed in the best way possible. And, to do that, it's going to require all of us. And the concentration and focus is just unprecedented, unparalleled, in my opinion.
And also, if I can just add really quickly, I think what you did was originally your first comment was you went out and saw like what the community needed for Lightning, and you went to solve this problem. And obviously, for Lightning to work, there's two main components. I mean, obviously the protocol level and the security must be top notch. And obviously we have top notch developers working on that. But it's not Lightning Network. The value proposition is being a network, so it needs to be bootstrapped with a really good UX and UI. So I really like the idea of having people working on the integration layer, like Zap Wallet, like all sorts of middleware, like Lightning Charge and Lightning Ramp. At the same time, in combination as the engineers working on the core protocol, because the engineers also need to have some kind of feedback, right? They can't develop this solution in kind of like an ivory tower and have hypothetical threat models, which is extremely good, but you need to compare that with some kind of market feedback. So I like the idea of allowing this kind of experimentation, but huge. Obviously, I think everybody knows that there needs to be huge disclaimers, and that this experimentation must be kind of contained. But I'd rather have a lot of failures now with maybe some real money, but just a tiny bit of real money, than have some really big, massive systematic failures later, just because the development of the security was kind of isolated from potential threats.
Yep. Michael, any comments real quick before we go to Adam?
That makes sense. Yeah, Lightning Ramp, we're really trying to both, and two flavors here, aggressively allow adoption to millions of people to get Lightning Network, but also as safe as possible. So in reality, when you think about the Lightning Network, there are several different features. There are single hop payments, multi-hop payments. You can use Bitcoin, you can use Litecoin, you can do cross-atomic swaps, and you don't have to release all of these features at once. You can slowly release safer features over time, and that's what we plan on doing. So when I say aggressive, like we're going to start with the safest features and release those, and then as the network is more secure and as the code for the Lightning Network is built out, then we can release more features as the whole community grows.
Yep, very cool. And yeah, even Corey, our guy that handles our podcast, kind of said something too. He said, all of these other coins like Neo and all these other coins, even Ethereum, they create these secondary tokens, and it adds just all of this attack surface and complexity. And again, Bitcoin just doesn't do this. So that's just another great point that we can scale without additional ICOs and creating additional tokens and on and on and on and on that kind of stuff. So let's go with Adam. We haven't heard from Adam yet. Adam being awfully silent over there, having the cypherpunk look. Adam, what are your thoughts so far on the discussion and Michael's app here?
Yes, I would like to ask a question. When you're developing some cutting-edge technology, you get into all kinds of problems, like this crypto function is not implemented in my language or whatever. When you think something is going to take 1 day of work, it might even turn out to be a month of work or something like that. And what kind of things you personally encountered in Lightning Network?
Yeah, so obviously I started out working in the test network, and that's where most people should be working right now, and the SIM network. And when I first started looking into Lightning Network several months, 2 or 3 months ago, 6 months ago, excuse me, yeah, like lots of things broke all the time. you'd have some testnet coins, and you'd try sending it, and it would just disappear. Even the other day, when I was trying to do my demo, I tried to send a payment over to Blockstream, but the payment got lost along the way. So what that meant was that we had to use the failover protocols in the Lightning Network to recover those funds. And that's something that can happen during multi-hop payments. And that really hurts the channel, because it basically shuts down that channel, and you have to force reset it, which takes a couple days to do that. So no funds were lost, but it did hold up the channels for a couple days.
Are you using LND?
I am using LND right now, but that isn't to say that Eclair and Blockstream implementation aren't as good. In fact, I'd encourage developers to work on those platforms as well, just because we don't want all of our engineers putting all their time into just one implementation. It's better to have a little more diverse implementations, I think.
Thank you.
Very cool. Did you have any other questions, Adam, or is that good? All right. I think
Yeah.
Peter might. Oh, go ahead, Adam. Sorry.
No, I said that's it.
Okay, cool. Peter, I think you had one more question.
I just had a quick question for Michael. Like, what made you go with Coinbase in a partnership with Coinbase? Coinbase, if we look at the heuristic behavior patterns of Coinbase in the past, they do like to surprise us, which is fascinating for such an expensive and very well endowed entity. I don't know if you guys were surprised as I was when they said, "Hey, we got BCash." Nowhere in the history of product on-roading or product development and product launching do people launch such a significant product without any real marketing or real let us know when you're coming out with it. It was very interesting. So I'm wondering if we're going to continue to see, and I've talked about this on stream before, I wonder if we're going to continue to see surprises. So are you going to be surprising us with Coinbase? Is that how it's going to work?
Well, I think the reality from an engineering standpoint is that Coinbase is not just an exchange or wallet, it's also a platform. It's a platform like Ethereum. If you saw the demo, there's authentication that you can plug into, and anyone can just go in there and make whatever app they want. Exchanges like Kraken, as Trace mentioned earlier, they don't really have that capability, so it's harder for third parties to come in and integrate. So that gave Coinbase a competitive advantage over all of the other exchanges. To add on to that a little bit, like we're currently looking for other exchanges to do integrations with. So if another exchange wants to add some sort of peer-to-peer internal transfer, that would be great, because then that'll allow us to just move in and implement Lightning with their exchange without really needing their engineering team.
Yeah, that's fair enough. We're actually messing with their API as well. It's very, very powerful. I could tell some secrets about how their API and the vast functionality that their API allows for is very unique. Very unique. You can actually empty wallets en masse if you'd like. Check out the API, guys. It's very, 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 very open. So that's it.
I definitely want to jump on that and talk a little about the security of the Lightning ramp. When you go through the onboarding experience, you actually have to give a certain funding limit to the Lightning ramp. Initially, it's set at $1 per day. So even if we wanted to, if a hacker got in there and stole your auth token, they wouldn't be able to take out more than $1 per day. So it is absolutely not a risk that all of your funds on Coinbase are going to be withdrawn. On top of that, there are two security features that we implemented in the Lightning ramp. And the first being that these OAuth tokens are actually stored on client devices. And that means that we're not holding them in a database, so we are not a honeypot. If our servers get hacked for any reason, customer funds just can't be stolen. And on top of that, because Coinbase has two-factor authentication, every transaction if you have two-factor authentication turned on for your Coinbase account, every transaction requires a text message or a Google authentication in order to move any funds.
That's it. I find that interesting because our API basically gives like chmod 777 God mode to read, write completely empty wallets if you have the opportunity to do so. So it's good to hear that you guys are focusing on that security layer, because when we opened up the API, we were like, holy crap! If we create a little MVP using Coinbase API and get people to sign up through us, I mean, we could basically empty their wallets. It's a very, very, very powerful API that they're messing with. So I'm intrigued as to what the protocol layers of security look like on the Lightning Network for you guys. And so thanks for helping us out on that.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very awesome. Yeah, you guys got to check that out. The Coinbase API is probably a little bit more powerful than it should be. You might want to check that out, Coinbase. But look, this is the early days, and so we are most exchanges do provide an API to be able to dive into some of their information. So that's pretty cool. So I think we can move on to the next topic if anybody else doesn't have anything else to say for this topic. Okay, very cool. So before we move on, guys, just please ask if you give us a thumbs up. We really appreciate it. We can get into more people's feeds that way. If you're new to the channel, please hit the subscribe button down below. We'd love to have you. We have over almost 60,000 subscribers now. We do content here every day, for even on the weekends. Believe it or not, we're here with you guys here on Sunday. So definitely appreciate it, guys. Go ahead and do that. And let's move on to our next topic. Actually, one kind of thing really I want to comment on one quick comment in the chat that I thought was kind of funny. Somebody said, Vortex, you better disclose if you were invested in Lightning. And I'm like, Lightning, there's nothing to invest, man. If you, there is no token. This is not Ethereum. Okay. There is no other token that I need to disclose. I invest in Bitcoin. There's your disclosure. All right. So let's go ahead and move into our next topic here. Pretty interesting. This was an article here. Written by Adam here, the guest here, Mr. Adam Fiskor, and this was a pretty interesting article because it does talk about and feature a bunch of new privacy tech on Bitcoin. And so I want to get a little bit of a discussion going with privacy tech on Bitcoin, because there's a lot of back and forth. Some people are saying that privacy is never going to work on Bitcoin because it has to be privacy first, by default, privacy by default, and other people are saying that's no problem. We can add on optional security all the way up to the top, and people can choose. So I'm hearing it from both sides. So let me ask you, Trace, first as the special guest here, what is your opinion on that topic, on people saying that Bitcoin will never be able to be as private as we'd like it, and what are your comments on some of the technologies mentioned in the article?
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely a extremely important issue in total, and I apologize. I have to run in about 10 minutes, but I think it all kind of ties in, because look at our Lightning Network. We've got onion routing built into it, so that gives us additional privacy. Then we're going to be able to have these cross-blockchain atomic swaps, so we can be moving between blockchains to further obfuscate the audit trail on stuff. One thing that we didn't discuss with this Lightning ramp is, what are the potential regulatory implications when you're dealing with customer funds that you're custodying, because you might have money transmission issues there, even if you're just doing intra-account transfers between customers at your own service, like Coinbase, for example. And so we didn't really talk about that. And I mean, how does that play out when we're actually running or operating these different Lightning nodes? Then we've got lots of competition on the horizon. You've got Monero, you've got Dash, you got Smart Cash, you got a ton of coins that are going after the privacy niche itself. And that's because there's a lot of money to be there's a lot of value at stake there. I mean, just from tax implications, if you can lower that cost or lower the cost of potential penalty from things like tax evasion or tax avoidance or other stuff like that, then I mean, that makes that coin more attractive. So, when we're looking at the marketing and the value proposition, Bitcoin has to stay ahead of the curve in terms of time, money, and privacy. It needs to drive down the costs on all three at the same time. And so, building out things like CoinJoin, confidential transactions, the Dandelion protocol for broadcasting transactions, Mast, Taproot, Snore signatures with signature aggregation. I mean, look at Mast itself. And then one of the papers that came out, you're going to be able to have a Mast script that's going to execute on the main Bitcoin blockchain, but it's going to appear just as a normal Bitcoin transaction. So you won't even know that like the mast is what's executing in the background. I mean, this is like huge stuff. Then we've got like UTXO commitments and UTXO proofs and the TXO commitments and all this going into like fraud proofs and then the bulletproofs paper by Maxwell and Woolley. And so, I mean, like the privacy tech that's on the horizon, I think that it's a really big deal. I think it's going to add a ton to the Bitcoin value proposition. And it goes right into that first network effect of speculation, because if you can add a greater value proposition in terms of the privacy and the anonymity and the fungibility of the instrument at that base layer in the protocol, and also in the ability to transfer that value around over the communications channel, then you just increase the usability and the functionality of that. You know, the Swiss like to say that gold has no smell. Why is that? Because you can take the gold and you can melt it down and you can recast a bar and there's no more smell to it. and so we have to make Bitcoin operate in a similar type of way, in my opinion, if we're going to stay competitive and relevant, fighting for market share in that area. And there are definitely network effects there to be had. So, you know, if we don't fight there, then we're just going to be ceding that market, and I don't think that's necessarily a very good thing to do in terms of the value proposition that we're attempting to give to customers that want to hire Bitcoin for some reason or another.
Absolutely. Very great comment, Trace. So I guess we should probably see you off right now. Really appreciate you joining the show, Trace. As always, we had you on here a few times before. We're going to have you on again. Thanks so much, Trace, for donating your time. We super appreciate it. We hope to have you back soon.
Yep. Thanks so much for having me anytime, and keep up the good work.
Yeah. Awesome, Trace. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Trace.
Let me just
thanks, sir.
Yeah, let me just go ahead and ask Adam here a question about his article, and then we'll go and get Tour's comments on this. So Adam, let me ask you, what inspired you to write this article about all of these privacy technologies with Bitcoin, and how do you see us in terms of, because privacy is not binary, right? There's layers. So how do you see us in the terms of privacy and with Bitcoin moving forward? Are we on this trajectory to be able to, for example, be more secure than something like Monero, or what is your thoughts on it?
So first, what inspired me? I don't really put as much effort into my articles as my viewers want. I just, when I have a problem, then somehow I have to solve it, and I had to figure out what is the right direction for my wallet and for my work, where to concentrate. And for that, I had to write down everything where we are going. Yes.
Very cool. Very cool. So let me ask you this then, Adam. How far are we as far as when you compare Bitcoin with some of these other coins? Like, how far do you think how close are we? Are we going to be better, more secure than something like Monero in a couple of years, or is that something you just not see possible with Bitcoin?
So everything it depends on confidential transactions and bulletproofs. When is it going to come? If it's going to come. The problem right now with bulletproofs is that it's not quantum computer resistant. So it's fine for Monero, fine for Mimblewimble Green, but not for Bitcoin. It's not going to fly with Bitcoin developers. And when, because Maxwell and these cryptographers at Stanford are very smart people, I trust they are going to come up with something in 3 to 10 years, I think. And when we get there to odd amount hiding, confidential transaction bulletproofs, or call it something else, to add this technology into Bitcoin, then we will have a very messy fight, like probably messier than the block size debate was. We see that Bitfury is starting a blockchain on this company. Other miners are just, from public interviews, as I see, they just don't care about privacy at all. I was living in Asia for 2-3 years, and I did not met anyone who would strongly feel about privacy. So So we'll see. First, let's get the tech right, and then
yeah. So and remember,
stuff.
yeah, and for sure, and remember, there's a lot of collaboration too between some of these security projects. You know, I know that some, for example, Gregory Maxwell did some things, to help with bulletproofs, and Monero and Bitcoin, kind of share a little bit of that in the background. You can see that people working on bulletproofs see the importance of it, no matter where we get it, right? We want to get it in as many places as possible, and it's definitely not going to be only in just one chain. Bitcoin, I believe, will be able to have this amazing privacy tech down the road. And you're saying, Adam, that it could be as soon as a couple of years. Definitely looking at your article and seeing all this stuff that's currently in the works, that sounds about right to me. And my personal opinion, I'm going to ask Tour this, but my personal opinion is that we don't need to be privacy first in order to succeed, with privacy. At the end of the day, we just need privacy and the option for it. So let's ask Tour, what do you think about this? Is Bitcoin going to really kind of eat all these privacy coins lunch, or does it have to be privacy by default?
It seems to me that if you want privacy, you can get it. It's just, it takes work now, and the work that's being done is to reduce the amount of work. And ideally, you kind of want to, especially in the higher layers, you want to just have privacy by default. So you just go into that layer and you know that all these coins are fungible. And to me, fungibility is something that's often underappreciated when you're talking about privacy, because that fungibility means like this one token is indistinguishable from this other token of the same category. So, you have that with grain and with oil, and you want all these things to be highly fungible because then the work that's needed to verify quality goes down, the cost goes down. And so having a better fungibility in Bitcoin is also going to lower the cost of use and increase adoption, right? So I think that's important. And so as to like privacy first or security first, like I would prefer to have lightweight nodes that can be run all around the world and that just secure the network, because that's number one. Without the network, there's nothing. And then just look at, there's all kinds of interesting projects that are in the works around privacy. I think something, and especially if you think about atomic swaps, like intuitively, that must increase privacy. So yeah, I'm not really worried. I think 2018 could really be like the fight over privacy, or at least privacy could become a big part of the discussion. Because I was just looking at like United Bitcoin, the Jeff Garzik project, and it looks like they're going to sign up everyone. Everyone is going to be KYC'd. I know that governments are, thinking about having their own coin offerings, central banks, and so that's all going to be KYC'd. Ripple, we had this rally in Ripple. I think a lot of people noticed that and it's like, oh, wow, maybe we can, kind of have, in their minds at least, the best of both worlds. But so, and on the other hand, there's the cypherpunks who are like, hey, no, this is a core value. And we can do the tour of the financial world. That could be the Lightning Network. Let's just do it. So I think that tension is going to increase in the coming year.
Yeah, and I believe that can only be good, right, for Bitcoin. The furthering of this discussion of privacy and its importance. And yeah, so awesome, very well said, Tor. Lots of good points in there. Let's go with Michael. I believe you had a couple comments on this as well. What do you think about this privacy in Bitcoin? Are you happy with it right now, and are you excited for this stuff to come?
Yeah, I think right now privacy in Bitcoin could go further, and as Trace and Adam mentioned earlier, it's being worked on at this time. On top of that, the second layer solutions, such as Lightning Network, are not as private as Monero, but if you really want to, you can figure out how to do that. For example, in the Lightning Network, if you have a multi-hop payment and it has to jump 10 nodes to get to its destination, when that payment is being forwarded across the nodes, each individual node only knows where it came from and where it's going to. And this is a concept called onion routing. So there's the only node that knows the entire path is the original node. So you could theoretically just have manually define your routes to do circles just to confuse the network, anyone trying to monitor what's going on. And even if your route happens to go through one of these hubs that may be recording data to try and find out who's sending what to who. That node can only know where it came from in the next node, not the entire path. So by default, the Lightning Network will add a good layer of privacy, but not complete.
Yeah, so it just seems like more and more layers. I mean, that's what we want to do. Layer, you know, take this conservative approach and layer after layer of these new initiatives in privacy and security. You know, because that's one path, right? That can be successful. We do have other paths like Monero that just start with privacy by default, and we'll let the market decide to see how that, you know, is going to play out. But you know, in my opinion, we're going to have amazing privacy on Bitcoin in the coming years. Lightning is just one of those. I think Lightning is a huge step forward with the onion routing. And I think that we're going to have a bunch more over the next couple of years. And we will have, you know, eventually users will have that option to be almost completely dark at some point. Bitcoin does work, of course, well because of its the ability to have everything be public and audited and things like that. But there will be layers above that. For example, like Lightning, that we will be able to have 100% anonymity at some point. So let's go with Peter next let's go with Francis next on this, and then Peter. Francis, what are your thoughts on the privacy discussion so far?
It's a very interesting discussion, obviously. Just for our listeners, Adam is actually Nopara on Medium, so you probably saw his Twitter handle and never knew that this was Adam. So I've been following your work for a long time, so I know that your articles are not very long, but they are very prolific. I was just on Medium, and I think you've written about like 20 posts, I think, over the last year. And Nopara was working on, I think it was the first Tumblebit server in .NET. Was that you back in the day, like last year?
Tumblebit with Nicolas Doria.
Yeah, and I think now the project became Breeze, and then now it's Hidden Wallet. And you've also came up with a protocol called ZeroLink, right?
Yes, something like that. So Tumblebit become a little bit obsolete. When we started working on it, the Bitcoin network fees were, well, they were like right now, but they went up a lot. And, you know, we thought it's going to be temporary stuff, but it's not going to be temporary stuff. The Bitcoin network fees are going to go up. And this is what join market's problem too, that fees are going up and privacy technologies are getting more and more expensive, like $50 and things like that.
Yeah, so I think I have two questions. So for you, so my first question is, the way that I've seen kind of like Bitcoin core development evolve, it seems like there's a kind of unifying vision which combines scalability, which combines privacy, and which also combines you know, the smart contracts, which is essentially trying to make everything more compact, everything more lightweight, always kind of have the least proofs as possible, like on the blockchain. So it seems like there's a lot of missing pieces, and it's all gonna the feeling I have is that it's all gonna kind of come out all at once. So maybe you can talk about like the trade-off between scalability, privacy, and smart contract languages. How you see that evolving? You know, having all these projects kind of intertwined seems to me like it's just all going to come at the same time. And the second question is more like, do you think privacy should be more upstream in the protocol, or should it be kind of like an opt-in second layer? Because a lot of the solutions right now are kind of like opt-in sub networks. You know, like if you look at CoinJoin or Join Market, it requires like rebootstrapping like new network effects, which is potentially a hurdle. You know, same as Lightning Network. The technology is there, but it becomes exponentially more valuable as more people participate in it. And in the light, or in the context that, you know, do you think that in order to have privacy, like everybody needs to have privacy? So how do we deal with this fact? Like, in order for really us to enjoy privacy, everybody in the Bitcoin network needs to be able to transact privately with us. So maybe talk about those trade-offs, and how do you see privacy being included, whether it's upstream into Bitcoin protocol directly or whether it's on second layers.
In my article, I talked about how we could do Bitcoin privacy in a way that it is actually cheaper than a private transaction. A completely anonymous transaction is cheaper than a normal Bitcoin transaction. Now the question arises that which one is opt-in, the privacy or the transparency?
Yeah. No, and obviously, just so people know, like Bitcoin is really easy to audit. Right now, Bitcoin is still very unprivate, and privacy enhancing techniques don't extend backwards. Right, Adam? Unless there's something I don't understand, whatever privacy technique we get in the future will never extend back to the past. So all the mistakes that we're doing now will be there forever. And so what do you think? How do you think about, like, as a developer, which is influencing the way that privacy, or which is at least studying the way that privacy is being developed into Bitcoin? What do you feel about kind of the responsibility that you, the developers, have to make Bitcoin private sooner rather than later, so that we can prevent the users from accidentally making mistakes that will cost them dearly in the future because they think they're anonymous?
There is blockchain analysis, and there is another attack listening on the network. So if a blockchain analysis company is not listening on the network and not collecting Bloom filters in 2012, then of course they are not going to have that data. However, the blockchain is permanent, so they are always going to have that data. Yeah, they are developing new stuff, and our privacy is going to be worse and worse. But sometimes we came up with something, and it's a cat mouse thing that there are people who are working on protecting people's privacy and just generally free people, and the other side is trying to enslave people, just trying to figure out what they are doing. And at one point, one side is winning, at other points, the other side is winning.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And that's really important. It really is this cat and mouse kind of back and forth game. But in my opinion, I do think that privacy will win out in the end. We have brilliant people like Adam fighting for our side, for the privacy side. So very cool. So let's go ahead and outro then, Mr. Tour de Meister and Michael here, to say thank you guys so much for joining us. I know you guys got to go. We'll pass it. We'll go to Peter after this. So first, Tour, where can we find out more about you?
Just Twitter, as always.
As always, everybody knows who you are, Tour. Man, we really appreciate you joining and your insight, your information. Always great to have you on here, Tour. Thanks so much for joining us, man. And
thanks,
Michael,
guys.
You bet. And Michael, thanks so much, man. We really appreciate your app. We really appreciate your contribution to the community. We will be talking, I'm sure, more and more about this app in the future. So thank you. Where can we find out more about you, Michael?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me on. If you have questions for us, you can go to our Twitter account at Lightning Ramp, or our website, lightningramp.com/contact-us. We're currently looking for any exchanges that might want to consider doing Lightning as a service. So if you're one of those, please contact us. Or if you're a venture capitalist and you're looking for Lightning projects, we'll be looking to raise funds over the next 3 months. So please contact us.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining, Michael. We really appreciate it. You as well, Tour. You guys donating your time. We had over 1,000 viewers there, so thanks again, guys. So let's go to Peter. Let's pass it to Peter here. What are your thoughts so far, Peter, on the discussion so far about privacy having to be by default, about Bitcoin possibly becoming completely anonymous one day? What are your thoughts?
Come on, let's get pragmatic, guys. Come on, there's too much knowledge here, guys. There's too much knowledge, guys. Look. Let's talk Let's talk praxis. Let's talk pragmatically. Ain't nobody give a shit about privacy. Let's be honest. Ain't nobody cares about privacy until it actually gets to your front door. I mean, let's look at net neutrality. Ain't nobody care about net neutrality for 8 years until when it came back up into the Senate hearings. No one cared about net neutrality until it was in the mainstream media. No one cared about it until it actually affects you. And so we constantly go through, and I'm just being kind of a devil's advocate here, but we're constantly going through this mental model that's very, very simple. The mental model is this: what are we willing to give up in terms of privacy for convenience, right? That's what we're always looking at. We're always saying, hey, am I willing to give up this privacy, X privacy, for Y convenience? And what always happens is that the Y, the convenience, outweighs the privacy. And so while I understand the philosophical debate and the value of talking about why privacy could potentially change the way that Bitcoin ecosystem works, transactions work, I think privacy is, in my opinion, a moot point from a praxis standpoint, because right now all people care about are lower fees, faster transaction times, and can I move money safely and securely? And so for me, one of the things that I'm constantly talking about, and I think that is far more important than privacy from a pragmatic standpoint, is security of the network. 3 keys: immutability, decentralization, and censorship resistance is where we really need to focus. Privacy will be a feature add-on. It will be something that will be sandboxed. It will be something that people like Adam and everyone else is working on here. I mean, that's something that I really am excited about for the future, but I don't find it to be something that is really, really compelling as a value proposition as to why I'm going to buy Bitcoin. If I was a retail investor, I would say, how can I get my hands on Bitcoin? I don't care about this privacy thing, right? It's convenience for giving up privacy, right? So we give up privacy for mass convenience. And so I see privacy. Now, this is all speculation. This is a theory of mine, but I see privacy being a potential value proposition for speculators into 2018, into 2019. And what I mean by that is as the rising tide of surveillance state, of the surveillance systems that are around us, as they start encroaching into our pragmatic lifestyles, when we finally go to the market and someone says, you know what, I'm going to need an extra ID for that. You're going to be like, wait. No, usually I just give you my license. Oh, no. You heard on the news last year they passed X, and you're going to need to give your driver's license to get these cigarettes, and you're also going to need this new ID to get alcohol. That's when people are going to say, yo, whoa. Now my convenience it's not as convenient anymore to transact with these people. That's when privacy, I think, is really going to start hitting. So I see privacy as a speculative opportunity rather than a pragmatic opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's what we'll see play out this year. You're going to see the discussion about privacy, which will drive investors to start investing into privacy-focused tokens, even if they're not actually that private. I mean, all of these technologies are absolutely nascent, right? So none of them are really super protected. And then, of course, as you say, people prefer convenience, so they're just going to go to Coinbase anyway and buy these damn tokens. So it's going to be crazy to see the back and forth. But again, I do believe that, like you said, Peter, this can be added on for people who need it and want it. Again, if you're familiar with traditional programming languages, we have these things like sandboxes where we have VPNs. We have all of these different ways to manage servers that we can put them in their own secure environment. For example, like HIPAA compliant websites and things like that. Amazon has these type of services that you can place these databases in secure sandboxes and things like that. So it seems something that we can add on later. And I just don't see it, as you say, Peter, as this requirement for investment into Bitcoin. Like, it's really more of a speculative.
Ain't nobody care about privacy. Come on, Vortex. Come on. You've been in this game long enough. People don't care about privacy. If they cared about privacy, they wouldn't be having these cell phones. They wouldn't be having these webcams. I got 3 of them on all the time. I mean, people don't pragmatically give a shit about privacy. They care about convenience far more than privacy at any given moment of the day. And the question really is when is government, encroachment and this whole surveillance state encroachment going to get to the point where it corners us, or say, you know what, I didn't care about privacy, but now I really care about it because y'all are making it less convenient. And I think that's the key phraseology here is you're making it now less convenient for me to optimally live within the sovereign lifestyle that I want. And so once that happens, now for me, pragmatically, I don't care about privacy kind of as much as any other person in many regards, because I think privacy is dead. But when privacy when they start encroaching on my privacy and it makes my life less convenient, that's when I'm going to be doing deeper diligence into privacy coins, the technology behind them, and how I can support them. But right now, I'm just mostly interested in getting people on board of Bitcoin, as are you. So let's get them on. Let's have the privacy be a feature add-on and less of a something that we need to push as a value proposition, because I think we're marketing the wrong message to new people, because new people will be like, I want this Bitcoin, I want these gains. They keep telling me that's uber private and it's really cool, but then I realize that it's not really private, it's pseudo anonymous, and then I have to use this coin called Monero, which I'm basically mining all the time anyway, without my knowledge, because Monero is everywhere. but I mean, I think it just convolutes the conversation. So I try to stay away from the privacy conversation and more of the utility of Bitcoin and the value of Bitcoin at a pragmatic level.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny. There is a bunch of Monero mining software out there that has been hidden in people's browsers and advertisements on the web, all sorts of fun stuff. So you're probably mining Monero not knowing it. And even in this post-Snowden world, it seems that people should, they don't care about privacy as much as they should. Let's go to Francis and see what his thoughts are on this. So far, wait, yeah, did we go to you? No, we didn't go to you, Francis. So,
I already talked, but I had a comment anyway. So
yeah,
thanks for
that.
And I think, it's definitely true that people assign a lot of value to privacy in theory, but in practice, as soon as there's any cost to it, they usually seem to value it a little less. And one thing is for sure is that Bitcoin holders definitely want their Bitcoins to be more private, even though they don't want privacy themselves, because they think that other people value privacy and they want that value proposition to be answered by the coin they hold and not some other coin. So I actually agree that the incentive for privacy is a lot focused on speculators that believe that others will want privacy in the future. So that's an interesting thought. But again, I think people want their Bitcoins to be private more than they want privacy itself. I think that the trade-off of going to some other coin for privacy is pretty big. The barrier to using something other than Bitcoin for transacting is quite huge, because you're moving from one network effect to another. You're taking on a huge cost in doing so. But I mean, I think the privacy war between the privacy altcoins is kind of moot. I don't think any of them is particularly super private right now. Definitely none of them have any sort of scalability / privacy trade-off or roadmap fixed in any way. I think Bitcoin's probably more advanced. And as Peter said, when when privacy is really in extremely high demand and people they won't care about the cost, they'll just go for privacy. I think that's, as you say, that's going to take a few years, but hopefully Bitcoin is going to be the option that's available for these people. And Bitcoin is going to have some privacy opt-ins by that time. That's what I'm looking for.
Absolutely. I try to tell and I try to stress people that, Bitcoin is the only public blockchain at scale. There are other blockchains and there are other public blockchains, but none of them are at scale. And they're going to have their own scaling wars and scaling debates to go through. For example, with Ethereum, they're going to have to go through the proof of stake and proof of work debate internally and all that good stuff. It's going to get really crazy. But the bottom line is that Bitcoin is becoming more fungible. There is a ton of tech in the works right now for privacy. And Adam has a great article that you guys need to check out on some of this upcoming tech. So very cool stuff, guys. Let's go ahead and move on to the next topic. If you guys are just joining us for the first time, please hit that subscribe button down below. Give us a thumbs up if you guys like what you see here. Give us a thumbs down if you don't like what you see here. We do try to provide the best information that we can and give you guys our honest opinions as much as possible. So let's go ahead and move on then to the next topic, which is mining to explode in Quebec and Iceland, guys. The mining is just leaving. It seems China, it's just leaving China in droves. I'd like to, we have a special, inside information here from Francis. Francis has been giving us all sorts of information about Bitcoin in Canada, about mining, about all sorts of stuff. So I'm really excited to see what Francis has to say on this, on these news articles. Because again, we got articles about saying mining is moving to Canada. We got articles that saying mining is moving to Iceland. We got articles that saying Canada is actually going to will mine Bitcoin instead of selling natural gas, like all sorts of stuff. So please, Francis, without further ado, give us your take on this.
Yeah, so the particular article I think that we linked in the show notes is really interesting. Actually, it's about some of the government's reflections on Bitcoin mining and kind of revealing a sense of little or an overwhelming sense in the sense that Quebec, there has been some talks by Quebec politicians which are like, wow, there's just too many miners coming in. We need to start to raise our electricity rates. So there's even that thought has been crossing politicians to raise rates because there's too many miners coming in. So I'm just going to kind of like give a little very short kind of primer on what's going on in the mining space right now. So mining is the way that mining works is essentially imagine you have a box. That box costs money. You buy the box, and then you put electricity in. So you pay for electricity going into that box, and then bitcoins and heat comes out. Like they basically the equation of how the mining business model. So obviously, what you're trying to do at all times is to reduce the cost of that box, the capital cost. You're trying to reduce the cost of electricity. You're trying to reduce the amount of heat that you're creating because this is electricity which is directly not being transformed into a Bitcoin. You're trying to obviously take the most upside of your Bitcoin and utilize the heat. So all of these factors, right? So getting the hardware for cheaper rates, getting cheaper electricity, getting cheaper cooling. These are all, the competitive advantages that you're trying to get in mining. So mining is the most competitive business in the world. There's absolutely no barrier to entry whatsoever. Miners actually compete every single block. Mining is a kind of winner takes all sum. There's only one subsidy being given only to one pool. The reason why I'm telling this is to really make people understand that mining is always profitable if you're the most competitive miner in the pool of mining. So some people ask me, is there a kind of level where mining is profitable? What's the price of Bitcoin got to be for me to get some positive ROI? And that's because, and we're not going to get into that, but that's because there's an equilibrium between the price and the hash rate. So as the price of Bitcoin goes up, the hash rate goes up, and as the price of Bitcoin goes down, the hash rate goes down. So that if you are paying the least amount of dollars per hash that you're making as compared to others, you're always going to be making money. So there's like a constant culling of the herd in Bitcoin where the most competitive always stay at the top and the least competitive kind of go out. So your business plan as a miner is only to be more competitive than the other guy. There isn't like some sort of magic number you're trying to get to. You're just trying to outcompete everybody else. So in this context, if any kind of small kind of gain you can get, you're gonna go after it, right? Mining is also a zero-sum game in the sense that any gain that you make in competitivity is a direct loss for your competitor, which sets the stage as to why mining is so competitive and why people are willing to relocate in Quebec. So essentially, one of the most important things also in mining to be profitable is your timing. If you think of as a miner, you have a certain kind of hash rate, and the difficulty traditionally always goes up because the price of Bitcoin has continuously kind of always been going up. So your hash rate is like a depreciating asset. So on day one, you have like 0.1% of Bitcoin, and on day 100, if you don't do anything, you're going to have 0.05% of Bitcoin. So in the first few months where you're mining, you can make more money in the first 2 months of the year than the next 10 months of the year combined. So timing is a huge issue, and the biggest risk in mining, one of the biggest catastrophes is having an idle miner. An idle miner is the worst thing that can ever happen to you. It's a miner that you already bought, and that's not mining. So why are people like coming in droves to Quebec? Well, essentially, if you look at kind of the advantages that I've been describing, Quebec has low electricity rates. Obviously, like they're about 3 cents kilowatt by hour USD, which places it at one of the most competitive places in the world. Like for standardized rates, you can always get special rates somewhere, but if you're coming in and get the standard rate, you're in the top 5 in the world like immediately. You also have cooling, which is free for like 7 or 8 to 9 months of the year. So it's actually so cold here that it's really easy to take the cold air in and put out the hot air. There's also all sorts of things you can do with energy heat reuse, and there's also just the main thing is that there's power available. So if you look at where the miners were before. A lot of them were in China, because traditionally, in order to get all these economies, you're building these huge economies of scale. So this is why everything was done in China. However, what's been going on is that China's been losing its competitive edge, specifically because they are essentially, it's becoming harder and harder to get access to the grid, and China is kind of unilaterally cutting off some of the big miners off of the grid, creating a situation where you have a higher risk of having a bunch of idle miners. So if you see, for example, the difficulty of Bitcoin went down recently, like a lot. I think one of the difficulty changes was like minus 18%, which is kind of rare. Obviously, the price of Bitcoin, went from 20,000 to 10,000. But also one of the things that is going on is that a lot of miners are unplugging in countries, right? So a lot of the difficulty drop is actually miners that have been pulled off of the network, and they're looking for a place to go. So right now, the situation we're having is we have all those miners that are looking for competitive edge that are migrating to Quebec. And actually, the big problem is so we're having a big problem in Quebec right now, which is kind of partly our fault, because the Bitcoin community in Quebec has been promoting Quebec as a mining destination. And actually, everybody's coming to Quebec right now. And the big problem is that we have the electricity, but we simply don't have the connections to the grid. So because obviously national electricity grids are centralized bureaucratic processes, there's no free market. The government actually has to allocate like how much electricity goes where, and like all the miners are swarming kind of the government, saying like, I want the connection, no, I want the connection. And there's only a certain amount of physical connections to the grid. So the government is in this kind of situation where like, so how do we allocate this? We got like literally hundreds of people, huge businesses calling us and like bidding and like trying to outbid each other to kind of get access to our hydro. So this is causing, energy policy in Quebec is starting to center around Bitcoin mining. Like the discussions are centering around how do we do this. So and as I said, some of the crown corporations, the people who are actually selling the electricity are very excited at Bitcoin miners coming in. But now you got, huge foreign, a lot of them maybe Chinese companies that are coming here, and they're like buying all sorts of cheap land and making all sorts of installations here. And they're kind of trying to grab access to the grid. And obviously there's a kind of political component of having all these, foreign firms, taking over essentially our grid. So that's like crazy. I mean, literally, this is like hyper Bitcoinization. Bitcoin is at the center of energy policy. It's absolutely massive. Like, just to give you an idea, the whole discussion is centering also around electricity surpluses, which is one of my main theses, is that Bitcoin is super good for the environment and for energy policy, simply because it allows people to manage their electricity surplus. So think about it like this. If you're producing renewable energy, whether it is wind, whether it is hydro, or whether it's solar, you don't decide when you produce electricity. You produce electricity when Mother Nature gives you sunshine or wind or rain, right? And you cannot also match that with the consumption. Who knows? Is it cold on the day that it's windy? No, of course not. And because all these grids are centralized and there's no free market, you have this entity which is managing, intermittent supply and intermittent demand. So what Bitcoin mining allows you to do is to have a absolutely massively predictive consumption of electricity, which is mobile, right? So one of the huge benefits of Bitcoin is that, let's say that you're producing electricity at a hydro dam or at a wind farm. You can't move the electricity surplus you're producing. It's an illiquid asset, right? So if you're a hydro mine and you're producing electricity, the cost of transporting that is huge, because you're just gonna lose all that electricity in value if you transport it over long periods of time. And the cost of storage of electricity is extremely huge. So that's illiquid. So what you can do is you can take the miner, which are mobile, and bring it to the source of production and to offset a little bit of the surplus. So the main drawback of the big renewable energy production versus oil and gas and nuclear is that they are intermittent and unreliable, and oil and gas is reliable. And the big problem is the surplus. So I see a huge opportunity for all the renewable energy producers to get into Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining for this purpose. Also, just an example of what's going on in Canada, you can imagine there's a lot of oil rigs in Canada. And when you're digging for oil, sometimes you need to flare up CO2 or gas. You need to flare up some gas or stuff like that. So a lot of big kind of companies are producing electricity off of the grid because they're like up in the north of Canada, just producing their own electricity somehow for their own operations, or the production of electricity is a byproduct of their industrial operation, such as in the case of oil and gas, farms that are producing a lot of excess electricity by burning up gas. So you can actually take the Bitcoin mine over there and, plug into their electricity surplus. So this is kind of like the whole Bitcoin mining scene is intertwined with grid management and energy policy. And to me, this is just like mind-blowing, because this is kind of the future of Bitcoin, is to be an unstoppable, incontournable, an unavoidable kind of topic of energy policy. So that's kind of like what's been going on. And, I call it the digital gold rush, because a lot of people are sitting on these gold mines that they don't know. So you are sitting on a gold mine if you are in a jurisdiction with cheap electricity, if you have access to power, and if you have land. You are sitting on a claim that can be monetized by being sold to a Bitcoin mining company or rented to a Bitcoin mining company. So this is kind of like what's been going on. Over the past 3 months, I don't think a day has gone by where Bitcoin mining hasn't been in the news in Quebec and Canada. And so this is, Bitcoin is, as I say, Bitcoin is influencing our policy debates, might influence our elections, because if the government, if the current government makes decisions regarding mining that are unpopular, for example, the government is toying with the idea of getting rates higher for miners, specifically for miners. So kind of like I guess some kind of, it's not a tax, but it's specific higher rate for Bitcoin miners. That might turn out to be a super unpopular decision when Quebecers are paying $1 billion per year in opportunity costs and direct costs related to energy surplus. So if a government says, the miners want to come to us and eat all our energy surplus so that we can have cheaper electricity rates, and if for political reasons the government says, no, we don't necessarily want miners to come here, then this can turn into a full-fledged electoral issue. So who knows, maybe in 2 years, there's going to be a debate on TV asking the different political parties in Quebec, what's your party's position on cryptocurrency mining and the energy policy and the grid policy? Because this is an actual topic of discussion right now. So just wanted to share that with everyone. Sometimes we don't really see the unseen kind of adoption and the kind of things going on. But just so you know,
that's amazing stuff.
All this stuff going on.
That's amazing stuff. So there's a huge amount of stuff to do with mining that's going on right now in Quebec. And again, it is because a lot of the miners in China are exiting, right? Because of the recent policies that China came out with, people are exiting. And this, like you say, this is a digital gold rush. This is absolutely amazing. The ability to monetize. If you have some land and some cheap electricity, you have a gold mine sitting underneath you. And so that is just really awesome. And again, offsetting surplus, that is just huge. That's kind of how China was using it as well, right? They were offsetting a lot of surplus by these huge electricity basically these huge electricity mines, right? That were paid for by the government, had huge amount of excess electricity, huge amounts.
So pretty much all the mining in the world right now is being done either mining electricity surplus or mining subsidized electricity. So you look at the same situation as you mentioned that happened in China, was that a lot of the mining dams were built with excess power consumption provisions, which weren't met. So they had this surplus that they were willing to sell at basically cost, right? Which would just to recoup their costs. So and this is one of the refutations that I have for the argument that mining is somehow bad for the environment.
It's crazy, dude.
Although the data itself is completely skewed, and I will ask our readers to look at the video we did on Bitcoin mining, the meetup we did on Bitcoin mining. There's a section about it when we talk about this kind of data and kind of debunk it. But just the surplus of Quebec, the yearly surplus, without producing or without more electricity or without an ounce of CO2 more in the atmosphere, we can plug in 1 million S9s, right? More or less. Wow. So 1 million S9s could be plugged in without a single gram of CO2 being produced that wasn't already going to get produced or anything like that. And 1 million S9s is a lot of S9s. That's 1 million S9 is probably something like, you know, I don't know, like 3 months, 4 months of ASIC production or something like that at this rate. Yeah.
Yeah, 1 million S9s is definitely amazing. Let's get to Adam. He's got, I believe he has a question, and then we'll go to Peter. But Adam, you had a question for Francis. Go ahead.
Yes. I have a question, and this is probably one of the most important questions about Bitcoin mining. And you probably answered it like 5 times, but definitely get lost in the details. So, have you heard about art fords?
Say it one more time. Francis, you're still muted a little bit, but Adam, say it one more time.
No, have Francis you heard about?
Go ahead, Adam.
Have you heard about art fords?
Can you type it out in the chat?
Yeah, you can type it out in the chat.
It's okay. Sure. Art Fords was the second guy next to Satoshi in 2011 who you go ask questions because he know the most. Okay, have you heard about GHashIO?
Yes.
So just to say the readers, GHashIO was a pool that got close to 50%. And have you heard about Satoshi?
Of course. Of course.
No.
Yeah.
No,
yeah,
bro.
So what is common in these people that both art fords, Satoshi and GHashIO, get close to probably Satoshi even got over 50% in the first year or first 2 years in mining hash power. And you know, where are they now? GHashIO, nowhere. It's not even a pool anymore. Art fords disappeared. He doesn't have any mining equipment anymore. He was dominated the CPU age. And Satoshi, where is he now?
No, and I definitely see your point. Yeah. Oh, Adam, are you there?
He might have disconnected. Adam's having some internet problems, so he might have disconnected. But go ahead, Francis, and comment on that.
Yeah, so I definitely see Adam's point is that like the companies that used to be like previously like these giants in the space have gone away. So there's I'm assuming kind of one of the ideas is like just because there's like if you look at a snapshot right now, you might have a big company like Bitmain that has a huge monopoly over the manufacturing or the running of the miners. Definitely doesn't mean that this is going to be the case long term. And if you look at like the Bitcoin industry, like the amount of businesses that have failed the most, the business model that has failed the most has related to mining. So a lot of the huge spectacular failures have gone into mining. I don't think anybody has any kind of special protection. Also, if you look at just the operation of mining specifically, the fact that you have one big miner doesn't create any barrier to entry, right? Maybe the fact that you have one huge manufacturer, that may create some barrier to entry because not everybody can go to a foundry and actually melt a chip. So the biggest barrier to entry really in mining is the creation and distribution and manufacturing of the chips themselves, which requires having multiple billion dollars of foundry equipment at your disposal. And there are some things that, such as the laws of thermodynamics, which means that the efficiency gains of mining hardware the return on efficiency gains in hardware are gonna decrease over time. So, right now, a lot of the concentration of mining is because the manufacturers are they have a super big competitive advantage because the hardware depreciation is so fast. But as the shelf life of the hardware becomes longer, being concentrated around the manufacturer is going to become less and less a competitive advantage. So, regarding mining centralization, I'm not worried at all. And I think that what's happening in Quebec is definitely good because what we're seeing is that, this is a huge opportunity for other players to come in. For example, there's not only Bitmain that's producing hardware. You got Canaan, you got Bitfury, you got Halong, and the kind of mining gold rush that we're seeing in right now. A lot of the interest of Quebecers is directly geared towards Halong. I mean, a lot of people that I know in our community, a lot of us have participated in the Halong crowd sale. I personally counted, there are definitely thousands multiple thousands of Halong machines that were ordered and are meant to be mining in Quebec. Bitfury has announced a massive public deal with a company called HUD-8 for like 70 megawatts of mining data centers across Canada recently. For people that don't know, like the Bell Center where the hockey matches are, that's like 4 megawatts or something like that. So you're talking about 15 times a hockey stadium. The biggest, hockey stadium of the country, essentially 15 times of that size. That's like one mine that Bitfury announced. So a lot of competition coming for Bitmain. So I don't know what Adam's comments were about.
I mean, that was pretty much it. Like his concerns were, I think he wanted to point out that mining centralization really isn't going to be a problem long term. Because we've seen this play out over and over again. There's just too much interest. There's too much incentive to keep Bitcoin decentralized, right? There's just too much incentive for players. They just have too much Bitcoin at this point, right? They have a lot of value and say on how the network gets continued to be rolled out, and nobody wants mining centralization. We understand that that's bad for the network as a whole. So let's go with Peter. It's been a while since we've heard from Peter here.
It's okay. I'm not that important anyway. I'm just here for comic relief. The reason why Adam is gone is because he's probably mining Monero right now. So it's overloading his computer. Talking about mining, guys. Smash the like button for World Crypto Network here, guys. Smash the like button. Remember to give props where props are due. I never got into the mining debates. I thought it is too nascent of an industry. It is too nascent of a market to worry about mining centralization. Now, Vortex, you just said people are highly incentivized to keep the decentralization of the coins and Bitcoin and all that stuff, but that's not really it. I mean, the real value proposition, the real economic driver behind mining is the profitability, which is what Adam and Francis have just talked about here. I mean, that's we mine at scale, and this is really exciting for me because I've covered, I think, about 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 articles in the last couple of months since the China crackdown of mining. They're moving to Hong Kong, they're moving to Canada, they're moving out to Washington State, they're moving to South Carolina, they're moving to upstate New York. And so, I mean, mining companies are realizing that this is a huge opportunity, not only to get in on the bleeding edge of mining technology, but of massive opportunities to profit. Now, what I find interesting around the entire mining debate and all that stuff is about these S9 miners and the ASIC chips and all that fun stuff. We just have to remember the context of where we are in cryptocurrency today. The context of where we are is we're still just a seedling. We're just a seedling. We're not even walking yet, guys, when it comes to cryptocurrency. So when people get into these very heated and very dogmatic debates about mining centralization and mining monopolies and the ASIC miners, guys, the democratization of technology, the democratization of hardware tech is only going to advance. I don't know if it's going to be anytime soon, but I expect with the democratization and access to mechanisms to mine in the future, anyone's going to be able to mine. I think I remember mining on my laptop back in the day, and I'm sure you guys all mined on your laptop back in the day because it was cheap and it was easy to do so, and your computer kind of got a little bit hot, but then it was no more, And now we have, GPU, CPU, ASIC miners. I think the whole mining monopoly is going to be democratized. I think it's going to be broken up because I think it's old technology. I think the old mentality, the traditional worldview of that, hey, I can build these ASIC chips and hold a monopoly over the mining sector is old traditional thinking. The world will be decentralized. The question really is will the hardware be able to catch up in a significant amount of time to open up access to the retail investors like you and I so that we can mine? Now, am I a hardware guru? Absolutely not. I don't know a whole lot about hardware. I'm a software guy. I'm a software developer. So for me, the way that I see it is that the mining centralization, it's a moot point. Yeah, it's going to happen right now. Let them enjoy it. Let them enjoy it. Within the entire world of sorts, the world moves in cycles, right? There's always the harvest and there's always the famine, right? And so right now I see the mining companies going through a massive harvest. It's harvest time, baby. It's time to make that money, guys. But it's going to be the famine. They're going to end up with all these chips, all this outdated tech that they're going to somehow need to offload. And these newer startups, these new technology startups learning how to create different types of chips, ones that are scalable, ones that are flexible, ones that you can flip a switch and you can switch from mining Monero to Bitcoin to Litecoin to whatever. They're going to come out with them eventually, and I'm excited about that. However, at the meta level, I do want to say, Francis, I'm super excited about the fact that mining is getting more global, and it's now intersecting, as you eloquently stated, it's now intersecting with politics, not only local politics, but global politics. Now, this really is the Bitcoinization of sorts of the world, is that now when we have sessions, we have meetings, we have government, SEC hearings. When we see this stuff, I mean, guys, it just means you have to have a really strong hand, because we're going through these periods. A strong hand, guys, a strong hand. Hodl that Bitcoin. Make sure you buy more as much as you can, because it's only going to go up. So I'm really excited. Thank you so much for that update, Francis. That was huge. I didn't know it was intersecting with politics at that grand a scale. Obviously, being down here in the States, we see it from the SEC side of things, and we were really excited about that. But we don't generally get a whole lot of news up in Canada, so it's really nice to see that that it's intersecting with politics. It's going to intersect with voting, which is pretty intriguing to have like mining or cryptocurrency be part of the individual's ballot of sorts, to say, hey, look, I'm pro mining, I'm pro cryptocurrency. I think that could be a thing.
I mean, that's a lot of
totally right.
Great interest. For comment, Francis, I just want to say that's a lot of great, interesting points. I mean, the fact that the world is going to go decentralized, right? And so it is up to the hardware manufacturers. Are they going to keep up, right? Are they going to let us help them decentralize it, or are they just going to die? I'm curious to see what Francis' comments are on all that good stuff from Peter.
Yeah. So obviously, the hardware manufacturers acting as gatekeepers right now. You mentioned like startups making chips that become more efficient, but just a caveat. I think it's really the next step is really to have all the big chip makers. So obviously, Samsung has recently announced that it's working on mining chips. A bunch of chip firms that I've talked to, everybody is saying they have a 7 nanometer chip that's about to hit the market eventually. I'm not a hardware expert at all, but what I've been told is that surprisingly, kind of the ASIC chips are really kind of unsophisticated. They're not necessarily like high quality. I think it's more like they're not, right? So it's kind of like a manufacturer's niche right now. The manufacturers just decided to do Bitcoin chips, and out of all the manufacturers, there were none of the big ones were doing Bitcoin chips, so they got the first mover advantage there. I think that's going to definitely disappear. And as the barrier to entry to kind of home mining is going like a bell curve, in the sense that it became super, super hard to home mine, but a lot of people want to home mine. So right now what you're seeing is a lot of the economies of scale that were done in Asia through massive centralization. Now in Quebec, for example, these economies of scale are done with co-location and hosting. So one of the big popular business models here is like you just get like a 0.5 megawatt kind of like workshop. You can like rent a workshop with a 0.5 megawatt that can fit like 300 miners. You can fit like 300 miners in there. So people are like getting workshops and they're selling kind of rent. They're renting like just shelf space. And as an individual miner, like the miners that I bought personally, and I bought some Halongs, I'm not going to put them in my house. I'm going to put them in some other guy's place. So that's really cool. So the barrier to entry to like owning a miner is going down, because there is like a business case to be done to make a home mining or self-hosting a business model. And I think that's just really cool. And if there's a demand for home mining from retail, the actual chip manufacturers, they would, and home miners will always pay more for like the miner, right? So like unsophisticated retail miners will always pay more. So there's more profit in a manufacturing company in selling the chips right away and making a gain on the investment right now than mining with the chip. That's the big problem. You want the manufacturer to sell the hardware. The problem with mining centralization is that you don't want to have like one company which is withholding the hardware or selectively selling the hardware to their friends. Or if you want some hardware, you need to ascribe to a certain set of terms and conditions, which may be, for example, you must pay with Bitcoin Cash, with BCash. That's something right now, like Bitmain is forcing everybody to pay with BCash. You cannot buy Bitcoin miners with Bitcoin, you need to pay in fiat or BCash. So what we want to do is want to avoid that, and we want to make sure that the manufacturer is selling to the retail market. Because, by the way, there are a lot of mining manufacturers out there. It's just we focus on Bitmain because they're kind of the only ones that are still selling at retail, which is fair enough. I mean, it's a good thing. If Bitmain wasn't there, if Bitmain wasn't selling at retail, there wouldn't be a lot of choice out there.
We're already seeing retail establishments in Asia, specifically Singapore and I believe Hong Kong, where you can actually buy hardware miners off the shelf like Best Buy. So those use cases are being experimented on right now. And from what I have heard, and this isn't, gospel, but from what I've heard is that the retail establishments are doing pretty well, and they're actually charging them like $1,500 to maybe even $2,000 more than having a lead time of 6 months to get one. So the retail experiment, I think, is working pretty well, which is a good sign for overall adoption of Bitcoin mining as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. And like your biggest competitive edge in mining, other than the what we talked about, is your planning and your forecasting. So the sophisticated miners, they're just outcompeting everybody with traditional accounting and forecasting, because a lot of the miners that I know, they'll be selling their secondhand hardware to other people that are buying the hardware. So if you're buying secondhand hardware from a miner, you should probably be asking your question like, why is the guy selling the hardware and not mining? And why am I paying for this guy's hardware
to mine Monero? Obviously.
Yeah.
So many good points in there, guys. Russell Spears from the chat said that Bitcoin being built into energy policy already sounds like a good idea. Already sounds like a winner. So very, very cool, guys. We got to wrap it up pretty soon. So does anybody have any final comments on this? Adam or Francis or Peter on this topic? Nope. Okay, yeah, a lot of good points, guys. You're going to have to rewind this one. A lot of great points from Peter, Francis, everybody here. I really appreciate everybody joining us. We had well over 1,000 viewers for the majority of the entire session. So we really wish that a couple guys could stay a little bit longer, but hey, they're donating their time, and we really appreciate every minute that they're here. So I hope you guys learned a lot and love this podcast. We really try to bring you guys as much information as we can. We really appreciate you guys being here. Everybody in the chat, everybody here donating their time, and of course everybody at home watching this. So let's go ahead and ask everybody where we can find out more information. Mr. Adam, where can we find out more about you?
Nopara73 on Twitter, Medium, Reddit, everywhere. GitHub, of course.
That's right. GitHub, Medium, Reddit. You guys got to check him out. I have his link, of course, in the show notes. So definitely check out, again, Twitter, Medium, Reddit. This guy's, he's a cypherpunk, so he's pretty much everywhere. So check out Adam's work. He's got a lot of great work, guys. Mr. Francis, where can we find out more about you?
You can follow me on Twitter. I am in the same way as many of our followers. I'm a Twitter addict, so I spend most of my time there replying to your comments. You can also check out Calalaxy.com. This is one of my company's websites, and if you want to support the work that we do here, you can go to bills.com if you're Canadian and pay your bills with Bitcoin. So you paying your bills with Bitcoin is how I pay my bills, allowing me to come on the World Crypto Network and talk to you guys on my Sundays.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Francis. Again, so much good information from one of the best and coolest Bitcoin entrepreneurs I've ever met, for sure, you guys, definitely. So thanks, Francis. Appreciate it, man. Mr. Peter Saddington of Decentralized TV, where can we find out more about you, sir?
You can go to decentralized.tv or my Twitter handle at bitesizebitcoin. That's it. So
what about the Bitcoin Pub, man?
I mean, I don't waste your show, man. I don't want to be. I got 90 million projects. So you can also check out the Bitcoin.pub. That's our forum. It's one of the fastest growing social networks on the planet for crypto. So love to see you guys there.
Yeah, awesome, man. We can't not say the Bitcoin Pub, man, because you put that in every one of your videos. We got to say the Bitcoin Pub. So awesome, guys. Check that out. A lot of great communication on there. And again, Peter has so many good videos. He's been doing this for a while. Software developer, so lots of good insight. Thanks everybody for joining us. We have all of the people's Twitter accounts and information in the show notes. So definitely check that out, you guys, after the show is over. Again, thank you so much for joining. We really appreciate it. Had this great time, guys. We will be back, of course, again next Sunday right here on the World Crypto Network. So thanks, guys. And until next time, keep talking Bitcoin. We'll see you guys later.
See you.